Welcome to Underdog Rising with your host, Wade Bozane, where we ignite your journey from humble beginnings to greatness through inspiring tales of top executives and entrepreneurs. Welcome to this episode of Underdog Rising, where you'll learn about the essentials of networking for career growth, how to invest in your personal brand to stand out, marketing yourself as much as your work, how to build credibility early in your career, and the importance of tracking accomplishments. Today, we are joined by Celina Souffrant, who is a career coach who has helped over 250 candidates land job roles at companies like Google, Apple, Meta, Zoom, Tesla, among other prominent tech companies over the past 4 years. She's also worked for companies like Google and Meta as a digital marketing manager. And prior to that, she traveled around the world as a freelance consultant, helping purpose-driven startups and nonprofits scale their businesses and maximize their impact. But today, she's focused solely on helping job seekers land their dream roles in tech by giving them the support they need to get past the applicant tracking systems, ace the interviews, and craft better offers. Welcome, Celina. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure. Super excited to have this conversation with you.
I'd love to hear your underdog story. Would you mind just giving us a summary of your career so that the listeners can better understand who you are and what you've been through?
Yeah. So my career is super unconventional. I actually started out as I'm a performer. I was a singer and kind of transitioned into opera in my 20s. And that I'm from California, the Bay Area originally. And it ended up taking me to New York because I really thought I was just going to be a performer for my entire life, right? That was kind of my whole identity, anti-corporate, anti-working. I was a creative. That was just how, my life was going. And when I moved to New York after a couple of years, I actually got vocal nodules, which are like little calluses on your vocal cords that a lot of singers get. And you basically can either get a surgery or you can take a break and hope they go away. And so for me, I elected to take a break. I wasn't, surgery terrified me. I didn't have good insurance. I was like, I'll just rest and do some other stuff and kind of come back to it. And that was where I ended up getting into modeling and meeting an entrepreneur who was sourcing fair trade clothing from Thailand and Vietnam. And I ended up kind of taking over his wholesale business. Initially, I was in his lookbook and we really hit it off and connected. And so he had me start doing his trade shows. Then from there, working with accounts like Whole Foods and really just the B2B kind of back end side of the business to help him grow. And after doing that for about 5 years, it kind of just took off. I enjoyed it. I loved it. It allowed me to travel all over the country and eventually the world. I was like, singing, I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But what I did realize was I was a really good salesman. As you can tell, I'm a quick talker, love connecting with people and kind of love the idea of pitching value and helping people see how, that can solve their problems. But I got tired of talking and thought, is there a way to scale my efforts? Instead of having a lot of one-to-one conversations, how can I do something once and, 10x my return or 100x my return? And so that led me into digital marketing and storytelling and learning how to, build pitch decks and PDFs and web pages and email marketing. And so I decided to leave his company after about, 4 years and moved abroad to Europe and worked with startups all over Western Europe, basically just doing the same thing for them and really building up my skill set. And after doing that for probably about 2 years, that was where I kind of, again, came to that fork in the road moment where I said, you know what, I'm doing a good job at this, but I could probably do it much better if I worked for a bigger company and I could actually get paid more. I wouldn't have to live paycheck to paycheck and country to country, which is something that a lot of people don't get to say. And so that was where I started looking and thinking seriously about an MBA. And so I ended up coming back to California and studying at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. And because I had thought I would actually do something global. They're known for, producing a lot of people who work with international like NGOs, the World Bank, IMF, all of these kind of like big international organizations. And I thought maybe that's what I would do. And I ended up getting the MBA just kind of as a backup plan because they offered me that second degree for a high discount and thought, why not? And after I graduated in the Bay Area, there weren't a lot of, kind of socially minded, nonprofits or startups. They were more closer to kind of San Francisco and Oakland. And I met my husband and ended up staying in San Jose. So that just wasn't an option for me. And so that was where I really started my job search. And it took me about 6 months before I finally got a role at Google. And to be frank, they only hired me because I speak a lot of different languages. And they needed someone to run a webinar program in a bunch of languages, building all the assets, delivering it. So it kind of used my language skills. It used my performing skills because I was on camera. And then it used my creative skills. So it was kind of a culmination of the journey up to that point. And so I always tell people hey, if you want your kid to be creative, give them a performing arts degree. It's the best thing you could do.
And that's really great, though, because I think oftentimes we wonder, I'm studying this, I'm doing something that, it might be, I don't know, say esports or something, right? Within higher education as you're studying, but then you don't know right now at this present moment in time where you'll end up. But it's interesting and fascinating to see how it all intertwines, and it can boost sort of what you do, throughout your career. Because as you stated, your first job, after sort of college and all of that was, being a singer and a model, and you even did opera in undergrad, which was just so fascinating. And you really wanted to be that performer, but I just would like to focus on like how did that experience shape who you are today, and like what led you to do that corporate career shift?
Being creative, thinking out of the box, and again, all the aspects of performing, like being in front of people, all the training and enunciation, learning different languages, and going abroad and realizing people think very differently in different places, and that America, you it's kind of like there's I don't know if it's called a comic or there's some kind of expression where there's two fish swimming, and another fish comes to the fish and says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And the one fish says to the other, "What's water?" Right? Because fish don't know that they're swimming in water, right? Like, and that's your culture. And so I think growing up in America, if you never leave, you think that American culture or American mindset is the only thing because you just don't know. Right? And then you travel and you meet other people and you see other ways of living, and it's like, mind blown. So I think that all of my experiences up until this point have allowed me to have that kind of bigger picture thinking, that global mindset, but also again the ability to really to understand the power of speech and connection. All of that, being a performer was what kind of led me here. And then that corporate mind shift kind of happened as a survival mechanism because after the MBA, I couldn't really get a job that I wanted. And so I had to kind of play in a different field and learn like, okay, well, this is the opportunity that I have in front of me. So how can I make the most of it? And again, finding something that catered to my skill set of being multilingual and being able to create and deliver presentations. Like there's not a lot of people out there with that direct skill set. So again, speaking back to what you said, whatever your degree is and your passion, I think again in college too, ultimately it just matters that you have a degree. These days, it really doesn't matter if you have a degree in marketing. Like, does that mean you're going to get a marketing job? Not necessarily. So study something that really enriches you and gives you your unique skill set, understand the value you bring to the table, and then start looking for roles that fit that. And again, that comes back to networking. If you reach out to people on LinkedIn and ask them, do they like their job? What about it do they like? What type of person does well? What opportunities are there? What, sucks about their day? All of these different things so that you can get a better understanding. Is this the job that's going to be right for me? Or maybe should I look somewhere else? And realizing that people switch careers 4 to 5 times across their lifetime, right? So the career you have today might not be the career you have tomorrow. So start with something that is going to make you shine, not only internally but externally. What are things that you're going to be good at that also bring you joy? And then from there, keep networking, find those new opportunities, and then kind of, move your way along there. But don't put so much stress into the job that I get tomorrow is going to be what I have forever.
People focus on that a ton, because they're like, I got to study this because that's the career path I want to go down. And oftentimes it doesn't even work out that way. And it just sort of unfolds before you as you take each step. Right. And I think to your point, just to amplify that, people shouldn't take it so literally or seriously just because you will find your way and try and shape your life. Obviously there's certain careers that if you want to go be a doctor or a lawyer, that's a certain path that you have to go down, right? And there's actually been research done behind that those are more of a linear trajectory. And what would you recommend to the listeners today if they do have opportunities to step outside of where they live and go maybe study abroad or something? Do you suggest that they maybe potentially jump on that opportunity as it might bring in different cultural experiences, or like what is your perspective on that?
I mean, I'm 1,000% an advocate of traveling as much as possible. I've been to probably 50 countries and I feel like I just am getting started. It's so funny because I literally spent my 20s, living in Brazil, living in Germany, traveling Southeast Asia, all over Western Europe. And I still feel like, I wish I had taken a year in college to study abroad. It's so funny, and especially now that I have kids, I'm not able to travel as much. Like that's always like the number one thing that I miss because it always gives me that refresher, that mindset change you learn. So I think that if you're someone who loves doing that, for sure, do what you love. I think you won't miss it. And especially if you're younger, before you have a family and a house and, all these things that tie you down, like, why wouldn't you go? I even know friends who took year-long sabbaticals, quote unquote, after they graduated college, and it didn't affect them at all. They're still, engineers at high-tech companies and they're fine. So I think there's a lot of fear in it. I think there's, just people put undue pressure on themselves, especially when they're a little bit younger, when they actually have all the freedom in the world. And I think it can only benefit you. And if that looks like a month, if it's a year, you can kind of take that agency and figure out what you want to do. But again, like, there's no time like the present. It's only going to get harder. So I definitely think that is super enriching. Again, I don't know your specific career path and career goals, but I firmly believe that, traveling and taking that time to investigate yourself and learn and grow and, add on kind of soft skills that you get through traveling and navigating new circumstances that you haven't been in before can only help.
Yeah, and I agree with you on the soft skills. This day and age when we're so pulled apart from one another, it's important to really try and increase those. And back again to your point about networking, right? I think that's where it definitely helps. And don't only do networking online. If you have the opportunity to do it in person through cohorts or small intimate events, definitely go and plug yourself into those. And one thing I sort of just wanted to touch on, right? You highlighted it a little bit earlier in our conversation, but you tend to have a lot of self motivation, right? You have a high output, right? Referencing the manager at Google, where they were like, "Hey, you kind of maybe giving me a little bit more work, etc." As an individual that has a lot of organic energy, motivation, is there anything that you might recommend to listeners today on maybe what they could implement to be a high achieving individual or increase that motivation to give higher levels of output?
There's two different things. There's your intrinsic motivation and your extrinsic. So in terms of intrinsic, it's definitely fostering a core belief in who you are and what you can do. I think I've always had kind of a limitless belief in myself and realizing, like, anything I want to do, I can do. That's kind of like like, there are underlying beliefs that we all carry that we don't even necessarily verbalize or think in words, but they just kind of form like who we are as people. And I think for me, I've just always believed in the power that I can do anything that I want to do if I put in the time and work. So trying to figure out how, for individuals, how to foster that within themselves and build that as like a foundational base. I think that's kind of key. And that can be through, self motivation. It might be through meditation for some people. It might be through overcoming difficult tasks that you might never have done before. Some people do like Ironmans or traveling or whatever, but overcoming something to make you have that belief, I think, is crucial for the intrinsic part. I think for the extrinsic part, it's about, again, like what you said, like reading the books or surrounding yourself with people who are where you want to be and seeing that it's attainable and then learning from them. And like you said, getting those tips. If you're somebody who is more right brained and you need more order, left brained, I don't know which one it is, but if you're kind of like more of that organizational person, then yeah, figure out if there's a planner you need to buy, if there's those lists and the vision board and the dream setting, and great. And if you're someone who's more free flowing, I think it's maybe just having a higher arching goal and saying, hey, next year by this time, I want to do X thing. And then figuring out, okay, well, what are maybe like 2 to 3 little things I need to do? Kind of like that Simon Sinek, the kind of, what is it? Start with why, or whatever the logistical thinking book is that he has, where it's like, hey, these are the little, Atomic Habits. That's what the book is. What are the little things, yeah, I need to do instead of having, like, the process, or I guess it's like, instead of the goal, it's the process. What's the process that I can change today to help me achieve that goal, instead of having a goal that I'm never going to actually achieve because I haven't changed myself and my thinking.
I love that book. It's very great about setting the different environments within sort of your workspace, right? If you go to read, make that one chair your reading place so that you can get settled in that environment and place the book there so that you know that that's your reading space, or sort of start make your goals a little bit smaller so you can start that process. Like if you want to go for a run, don't say you got to go for a 4 mile run, right? Just start by putting your shoes on, because once you get that motion going, it all just starts to snowball. And then obviously your shoes are on, they're tied, you stretch, then you go out and get the run done. And then earlier you touched on, it's important for people to build their personal brand. Do you have any sort of tips or tricks or highlights on how individuals can go about that? Obviously, there's a lot of listeners that might be newer to LinkedIn and obviously trying to get their foot in the door when they're going to network or get a a job role?
Yeah, I think it's kind of two things. One is lean into your strengths, maybe know two to three things that you do better than anyone else, and just drive those home across your resume, across your elevator pitch, interviews, networking. Just always remember, what value do you bring to the table and how is that going to solve someone's problem? I think that's kind of like the first part. And then the second thing is identifying, again, the role that's going to allow you to really highlight those skills. So think about, when I speak with clients, for example, I always say, what is your end goal? What is that job title that you're looking for? Great. Let's look at what they need and let's work our way backwards and figure out how what you have can solve that pain point. So, if you're someone, when I started my career, I thought I could do sales, I could do program management, I can do marketing. I've done it all. I'm going to be a triple threat. People are going to love me. No, that was just totally flawed thinking. And I learned really quickly, okay, if I want to get a role, I actually need to build different resumes for each role. And when I did that, that was when I actually started getting interviews and then eventually got to the role at Google and then eventually Facebook and my last role at Impossible Foods. So, you have to pick a lane and stick to it. The middle of the road is like the worst place to drive, right? So you want to stick in one lane, drive it home. So if you think, hey, I can do account management and I can be a product marketing manager. Okay, it's great that you can do those two things, but you're going to be competing against people who have done that one thing for 5 years. So why don't you instead just pick one, figure out the skills that you have that can really highlight, that role or highlight how you would shine in that role, and then just drive that home. Stick to that lane. If it doesn't work, you can always then go back to, the other skill or the other role that you have, but really just pick one, those three top skills that are going to really help you shine in that role, and then just drive that home across all of your assets and kind of career journey.
Is there any work that somebody should do to identify those top three skills? Like if they want to apply for a specific role, is it just let me look at what I've done in the past and let me think about what I'm good at? Or should people maybe go out and look at various different job descriptions and then see what those skills are required and see if their skills align with those?
So when I do career coaching with individuals who are kind of in that spot in their career where they don't know what their next steps are, that's exactly what we do. So first I'll look at and say, hey, let's look at your career history and call out the biggest wins by role. Then let's talk about, what do you love to do? Because were those skills related to joy, or is it that you were able to do it but you hated it? Right? So trying to kind of figure out, what were you good at? What did you actually like to do? Okay, now let's think about what type of role would use those skills, right? So like, let's say, for example, you're really good at creating pitch decks. You're really good at analytics and trying to figure out like what moves the needle in campaigns, and you're really good at writing. Okay, well, I know that that would be really good for digital marketing. That might be good for product marketing. You could maybe even do like paid marketing a little bit, but again, that's less writing and that's more campaign management. But if you don't really like doing that, then maybe you shouldn't be doing the paid. Maybe you should focus more on the product, right? But for me, I look at hundreds of job descriptions weekly, so I know pretty well, like, what are those tasks? Someone who's starting at the get-go might not know that. So I would say, do that work of understanding, what you bring to the table and what you enjoy doing. Then start researching job descriptions and noticing, what are the top two things that I'm seeing, across the board in these, and create an Excel or a Google sheet that has this title. Here are the top three roles, this title, top three roles. Then you look at the titles across companies. So again, this is a big exercise. It's a big undertaking that'll probably take you, 40, 50, 60 hours of work. But at the end of it, you'll have the clarity that you need to move forward, right? So if you can take a week, do the work, dive in deep, and then start job hunting, even though it's more upfront, it's going to save you time in the long run. Then, because I know a lot of people that just build a resume and just send it out to roles and hope it works, you know? And so that front work is going to be more, but it's going to ultimately get to where you want much faster than just mindlessly sending out a resume at the end of the day.
People need to focus more on that delayed gratification, right? Because they do at times look at, oh my gosh, this is, I got to put in 40, 60 hours of work to do this, to get it done. But then you wonder why, once that's done, everything moves like a hot knife through butter, right? Well, because you've done the work up front. It's not like, oh, I'm just applying. And you see that these days, right? It's like you go on LinkedIn or any job board, and it's like in a matter of 5 minutes, especially probably with AI, there's over 100 applicants or something crazy. Like, it's just, there's so much technology and so many people that are applying. You've got to think people on the back end, hiring managers, directors, et cetera, they don't have time to go through 100 resumes, especially in detail. Like, they're going to skim your resume in a matter of 3 to 5 seconds and then pull their information. And it's like, you have to stand out in that crowd when somebody's scanning your resume in 5 seconds. So like, can you do that work up front though, then go and connect. It's really a holistic experience, right? And that's where I think it's fascinating what you do for folks, because you have this mentality, you've been through it all, you've done all this diagnostic testing and stuff, and you sort of can work out that perfect package and help people get to where they want to go ultimately. One question I'd love to ask is, what are some common misconceptions about career growth that you think young professionals should be aware of?
I think ultimately the misconception I had that I see a lot is that if I do the work, I will get a promotion. Right. And I think that that's kind of like an old school thinking that did work back in the day, and it just doesn't serve us anymore. Right. I think that doing the work, yes, is good. But again, networking, talking about yourself, LinkedIn brand building, you need to really bring out the work that you're doing, and you need to make other people aware of it. Just doing it isn't enough. I think that's kind of the first misconception. The second is that staying at the same company for a long time is beneficial. And that also, I don't think really works anymore. If you really want to level up and kind of keep growing in terms of title and salary, I think you really do have to stay at one company for maybe 2 to 3 years max, and then hop on, because the basically the percentage increase that you're going to get through a promotion is not going to be the same as starting over at a new company. And it's funny, because when you talk to your parents, for example, they're like, just get a good job and stay there for 40 years. And then you're going to get the 401k and the pension or whatever, and they think that we're crazy for hopping around so much. But that's really the way that you need to do things nowadays, because again, like, you can get a much better salary after you put in the work and you're ready to get that title bump. If you go somewhere else, it's going to be so much more money than if you just stay, because again, the marginal increase that you're getting year over year or with a promotion is just, that's not it. Unless you're someone who, doesn't want the stress of interviewing and trying to find a new job, and you really love the company and you want to stay, like, there's nothing wrong with that. But just in terms of accelerating career growth, that you really need to market yourself and you need to move.
Yeah, it's just because the playing field, the environment has definitely changed, right? Like you were talking about, sitting in a job 40 years, you get that gold watch at the end of your career, and then you're done and you've been successful at life. It is no longer, because there's so much movement within the corporate world, right? Mergers, acquisitions, stuff that's out of your control. There's no longer, you just got to sit. You've always got to be able to drive value and make yourself stand out, like you were touching on before. But you spoke about building champions and making yourself visible within the org to help get that sort of promotion and get to the next level. And how can someone early in their career effectively communicate their value to their employer or manager or sort of overall champion?
I think the first thing is creating an accomplishments tracker or a skill tracker. I think most of us think like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I know how to talk about myself. And, if I need to build my resume, I'll remember this thing. I don't know. I've talked to a lot of people who don't. It's the funniest thing to me when I started this was, talking to directors or even, senior managers. And, I would ask them, we go back in a coaching call, when I do a resume kickoff, the first thing I'll do is say, okay, like, what's the end goal? What do we want to go? Okay, let's have an hour-long conversation where I ask you about your career in relation to this job description, so I can pull out the wins that I need to build your resume. And after going about one job back, most people can't answer questions anymore. And that's, and it's kind of like pulling teeth, right? Because if you're someone, let's say, who's been working for 12 years, you're not going to remember what you did 2 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. So if I can give any advice to young professionals who are in their first career, whether it's a quarterly exercise, a monthly exercise, have some kind of, tracker that says, this is the role, this is my title, this was the, month I did this, this was the project, and this was the outcome. And a big thing too that I found to be successful with my clients is, KPIs that are quantifiable. So don't just say, oh, I ran a really excellent, ad campaign with a client when I was a partner marketing manager, and they had a great success. Like, no, like, what was the success? Was it the number of views? Was it the engagement? Did that translate into new sales? Did the company grow over a year? Did you optimize the ad spend, and get a 10x ROI? Like, you have to really be quantifiable and specific, because numbers tell a story as powerful as words do, if not more so in most cases.
Hiring a career coach or someone that can advise you through that process is extremely fundamental, right? And I know, I came to you back in the day as well. I was in a position of like, I don't know where to go in life. And, I had to reach out to you. We had a conversation, and your work really is phenomenal, right? And that's why I think it is important. Sometimes people will look at cost over value versus like look at the value that is provided, and you might not see it up front, but whatever that cost is, it is absolutely worth it, right? Obviously, do your due diligence, right? Go and talk to the individual, look at their track record, who they've helped, etc. But it really is, and I would really highly recommend to listeners, like if you're in that position, reach out to Celina or others that you might know. But having a firsthand experience with you, I think you're extremely knowledgeable in what you do, and your success rate is very high, right? So just once again, appreciate what you do, because sometimes, especially early in your career, people are lost. We don't know what to do. It's like, oh, just have your resume. Do I need a Word document? Do I need PDF? Is it going to pass applicant tracking systems with AI? How do I stand out in 3 seconds? How do I do the interview? There's so many components that come into it, and you're just like mind blown. So going to folks like yourself, paying that cost, it pays dividends. I'll just say that bluntly. It really does, right? Because it'll set you up for success, especially I feel if you do it earlier on in your career, and then you develop a relationship with that person and keep going, and then have that accomplishment tracker. Because I remember when we had the conversation and you were like, so what about KPIs? I hit that roadblock too.
And honestly, I always tell people this too, even though it's like pulling teeth, like it helps you so much in your interviewing. Because again, yes, it's great for your resume to get your foot in the door, but once you've done the work and you know your wins and you can rattle them off really quickly, like in an interview, because it's one thing to get into an interview, right? Like that was a big learning I had, right? I always thought, well, I'm in sales and I'm a fast talker, and if I can get my foot in the door, I'll get hired. That was not in my case, that, and especially in the tech industry, that is not what happened. I actually had to learn, like, there is a mentality and like a format to interviewing in tech that's very different from anywhere else. And you can do all the work to get in front of that person, but if you can't create an elevator pitch that communicates your value in 30 seconds or less, if you don't have a framework for answering questions that's going to communicate that value consistently over time, and if you don't know how to close, and use that opportunity where they say, do you have any questions for me? And instead of just trying to sound smart or fill that space, with words, you're going to lose that opportunity. And all the work that you did is going to be for naught, because you're going through 8 rounds, of interviews with really smart people who are talking to lots of people, and lots of candidates at the same time as you. So if you don't know how to really maximize your time there, it's not, it's unfortunately, it's not a waste, because you're always learning, but it's just going to be a time suck, right? Like, because it takes a lot of time and energy to not only prepare for an interview, but to go through full day panels.
If you're somebody that's already, not only where you are as a career coach, but also have been in those situations and had a very high achieving career, wonderful to talk to people like you, because you've been there, right? Learn, what's it? A wise man learns from other people's mistakes. Like, it's very true. So, go and have the conversations with people like you, because you will be able to guide that interview. But go and put in the work, right? Spend time with folks like you interviewing, have mock interviews, get that muscle so worked out that when you go into those conversations, you're just turning it over, right? And then you stay top of mind, and then boom, you got the role. Obviously, there's way more that goes into it, but yeah. So Celina, I know that we've spoken about a ton today, and I appreciate all the knowledge that you've shared with us. But I'd love to hear, like, what's next on the horizon for you? Like any exciting new endeavors or future plans that you have in the works?
I think it's kind of a pivotal moment for me right now, kind of like I had mentioned, where with the startup, where I realized kind of doing one-to-one engagements like was helpful, but there was a better, kind of more effective way of using my time and my skills to scale impact. And that's kind of where I'm at right now with my coaching business, where I still do one-to-one clients, absolutely love the work and helping them and seeing that transformation, like we mentioned. But now I'm trying to think about how I can scale my time. So one way I'm doing that is through creating an interview guide that I just recently launched. And basically, it's kind of what I had just touched on. What are the 3 kind of core components that you need to really level up on in your interview? The elevator pitch, frameworks for answering questions, and then how to maximize that close to be able to get to the next round and get an offer. So I've kind of taken all of that knowledge that I have in my coaching calls and turned it into a digital download that I now have on my website, celinasouffrant.com. You can find the interview guide and you can download it. And it's basically, for people who don't maybe can't afford a career coach, who don't see the value in it, like you said, it's people who are more self learners. That's there for you as a digital download, and it's giving you all of the wisdom that I've had with over 250 clients, and giving it to you for you to use on your own time, right? So everything that you need is there. You can read it, you can learn. There's samples, there's mock interview templates, there's guided frameworks for how to build out your own answers, and so that you can really level up your interviewing game yourself. So that's kind of like one thing I'm doing. The other thing is trying to work more with higher level organizations and institutions to actually give scaled trainings on how to build better resumes, how to interview more, how to use LinkedIn as a brand building platform. Because even in my MBA program, that advice was not good. The stuff that I received did not help me get a job. I had to then, after I graduated, it took me 6 months, hundreds and hundreds of hours of learning how to redo my resume and practice interviewing, and going through the interviews, not getting the job, crying and being heartbroken, trying to figure out how to make it better, and just going on that journey over and over again. And I just did not get that support in my higher education institution. I think most of the people who are there are focused more on getting kids in the door and helping you, get the skills that you need. But in terms of like that career services support post graduation, like I have found in my experience, I'm not going to speak for all colleges and universities, obviously, but I've just found that the resources to help people build the best assets to get a job are lacking. So I'm hoping that I can, I'm trying to work more with institutions to help them improve.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, right? That sort of social impact, just to fill that gap, because I think there is. It's oftentimes, okay, now I'm studying, I spend my years studying and educating myself. Now I got to go get a job. Okay, cool. I just got to go apply and I'll get something. Well, that's not really how it works. And then they go, well, now what do I do? I haven't been leveraging platforms like LinkedIn for the past 2 years while in college while I'm studying, which they could, right? They could post about what they're learning, the groups they're involved in, how they helped at different restaurants they've worked at, to kind of build up that sort of credibility for themselves before they even go into the career world. But I really like that you are shifting into that to sort of scale impact, right? Because you do have a lot of impact on the individuals that come to you to grow their career or resume. And now sometimes there are folks, right, in different situations that they can't afford it, and I think this is a really accessible way for individuals to kind of learn on their own time if they can't come to you. But it's also a way for you to just help others, because you can't help everybody because you only have a limited amount of time, right? But this is such a wonderful way to give back. And I'll once again do a shout out. I've worked with Celina. Guys, definitely go check it out. I'll link it in the show notes so that everybody has access to it. So Celina, your time has been extremely valuable. Is there any sort of last closing words or thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience today?
Just motivational in that if you're not getting a job right out the door, or if you're someone who's been applying for months and you're just getting rejection after rejection, just realize it's not you. There's nothing wrong with you as a person. We're going through some of the craziest shifts and changes, and it's in the tech industry at least, and even rippling out to other industries. I'm starting to see kind of clients trickle in from the hospitality and healthcare and education, and all of it is just getting upended right now by AI, by job portals and tracking systems, by companies that are just doing massive layoffs just because one other company did, so they feel like they can as well. And it's having direct impacts on people's lives and their self-esteem. And so I always like to remind clients that, what, it's not you. Right now, we're in a really crazy, frayed, broken system. You do have to level up with your resources and your skill sets and your brand building and your storytelling, and getting all of these new skills, but those are topical. They're not you as a person and your value and what you bring to the table. So just remember, even if you're not where you want to be right now, this is a phase. It's not forever. This, just because you're here doesn't mean you're going to be stuck here forever, and it doesn't mean that there is something innately wrong with you as a person. Just remember that if you can, get the skills, go out and learn, build your network, keep investing in yourself, learn how to better position your value to ideal clients or ideal companies, for those jobs, you will get to where you want to go. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, but you will get there, and there is nothing wrong with you.
Thank you for that. That's extremely important and what they need to hear. So, once again, Selena, thank you so much for spending time with us. And I just really look forward to your growth within this journey.
Thank you, Wade. I appreciate it. You as well.